I am James. Please follow me down the hall. This way, please, through the master doors. Welcome to the Business Farm Presidential Lounge. We are at the top of the world. From here, we can see Sydney, London, New York, Rome, Paris, Delhi, Montreal, and Tokyo, all at the same time.
Please take a seat on the Chesterfield and feel free to rest your feet on the ottoman. Now, enjoy this armchair interview in the Business Firm Presidential Lounge.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business Firm. Today it is my very great pleasure to welcome to the Business Firm Presidential Lounge Sharon Cable. How are you, Sharon?
Very well, thank you, Steve.
Fabulous. Now, Sharon, you are South Australia's foremost expert in communication, presentation, and you help a lot of business people around the world, not just in Australia, with being more effective in their communication and therefore in their leadership. Talk to us about what you'll speak to us about today.
Terrific. Yes, I'm going to talk on how you can become a more confident presenter. Mm-hmm. So I'm called into organisations all the time to help executives and CEOs and salespeople to put together an effective message that really hits the mark. So whether you're speaking at a board meeting, at a conference, whether you're delivering out in the community, or you're simply running a team meeting, how do you put together a meeting that put together a presentation that sells your message, has influence, is impactful?
Yes.
So that's really what we're going to be looking at today. So imagine for a moment, Steve, that the next time that you stand up in front of an audience, you get yourself positioned just right and you're 100% confident and you take the stage and you're able to eyeball absolutely everybody that is in that room.
Yes.
Imagine what it would be like if you could speak and you know that you're 100% confident and you know that everything that's coming out of your mouth is exactly as you've prepared it.
Yes.
Imagine for a moment that you know that you've got everybody right there in the palm of your hand, how powerful you know you are. And when you sit down, you know that you've 100% nailed it. That's the dream for most people.
Yes.
But the reality is for most people, when they do stand up in front of an audience, their hearts are pounding, the knees are wobbly, the beads of sweat are forming on their brow. The reality for most people is that they're feeling slightly nauseous, and when they open the mouths, the words come tumbling out in no particular order, and certainly nothing like they've prepared them.
Yes.
And you know, when people sit down, they think of all of the things that they could have said and should have said but forgot to say on the day.
And then they regret it.
And they regret it. So the good news is that we've certainly got a strategy that can help people to prepare, design and deliver effective presentations using formulas. And, I'm a real big one for using formulas.
Oh, I love that. That's I mean, for those of us that are accustomed to speaking to people, we love being on stage, and it's an opportunity for us to share what we know and help others. But of course, like for most people, they become very uncomfortable, and there's an element of fear, and there's a huge element of fear, and that can unfortunately ruin their ability to transfer what they've got in their heads and in their hearts to their teams, to their employees. And they appear less than what they really are. And, obviously as business leaders, we don't want that. We want to make sure that we can be impactful for our stakeholders.
Absolutely.
For our customers.
So I always love Sir George Jessel's quote. He says, the human brain starts work from the time that we're born and only stops when we stand up to speak in public. And you're right. People do have an enormous fear around speaking in public. And when I ask them, what is it that they fear? It's that sense of being vulnerable and being exposed, and potentially that there might be somebody in the audience that is smarter than them, or there's somebody potentially going to ask them a curly question that they don't know how to respond to. So there's that fear that people will think less of them. And, you know, there are certainly some strategies that, you know, I use with people to help them calm the anxiety. You never actually want to get over your anxiety, might I say, because that adrenaline is what gives you the edge and helps you to find your flow and to really be on top of your presentation. So we never, you know, want to not have anxiety.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're bored, complacent,
Yeah,
and apathetic.
yeah.
So, you know, a
You
little
want
bit of
some
anxiety is
energy.
good.
Put us a bit of energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to get those butterflies flying in formation.
Yeah.
And there are some strategies to help people calm down enough so that they feel that they're in command when they take the stage and then get into the flow of things.
Oh, geez. We're going to help a lot of people today. You're going to help a lot of people today sharing this. Let's go to some of what we're going to discuss today. Sharon, I love what you just said. Having butterflies fly in formation. We don't want there to not be butterflies because, of course, that helps deliver some more energy, but to have them in formation. How do we do that? How does that happen for people?
Now, there's no one strategy that will work for everybody. It's a matter of finding a strategy or a series of strategies that helps you to be able to find your place of calm so that you are in control when you take the stage. One of the strategies that can work really well is and probably the quickest and easiest is the breathing. And when I'm working with people, I work on a 4-4-5 times 3 technique. And so what that is, you know, as you're being introduced or you're, you know, getting prepared to take the stage or stand up in front of your audience, it's just a matter of quite calmly breathing into the count of 4.
Okay. Right.
Holding for the count of 4, breathing out for the count of 5, and repeating that 3 times.
Right.
Now, that works really well because when we've got adrenaline flying through our body, we start breathing quite shallowly and we're also breathing much faster. And so we can become quite lightheaded.
Right.
And we're not really thinking that clearly. So what we want to do is really slow down our breathing, which is why we hold it for 4 seconds. Now, I can guarantee that when you try this for yourself, the first repetition through, it is quite likely that you will feel like you can't hold your breath for that 4 seconds because, you know, you are breathing so shallowly. But by the third repetition, you'll actually be feeling quite calm.
Okay.
So that can work really well.
Yep.
Another one, if you feel the tension in your shoulders, and I'm a real shoulder, I feel it right across my neck and shoulders. So what you can do there is breathe in right through to your abdomen. So I'll get you to do it while we're trying it. So breathe in right through, fill up your abdomen, and you can see how your shoulders start to rise.
Lift,
so
yes.
they really lift.
Yep.
Now, instead of exhaling, what we want to do is simply very slowly let the air escape.
Okay. Let me see if I can demonstrate
very
this.
slow. So breathing in and just don't do anything. Just open your mouth and let the air very slowly escape. Now, as you get to a point where you feel like you want to take another breath, don't. And at that point, what you want to do is then push all the rest of your air out.
Right.
And you'll feel your shoulders drop.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure
Yes.
if you noticed how lovely, it's like heaven on a stick
It
across your
releases
shoulders.
tension. Yeah.
So that's a really
Okay.
good, you know, physiological one.
Yes.
There is also another strategy which is really to deal with your conscious thoughts, because a lot of us move into our conscious brain when we're feeling anxious. So we start thinking at a conscious level. I'm nervous. I'm feeling under pressure. I haven't had enough time to prepare. You know, what if there's someone that really wants to make me look bad today? And we start sending us all this stupid nonsense,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then we feel nervous.
Yes.
So one of the things that we really do need to do is grab control of our mind before we prepare and have a conscious dialogue with ourselves. So there'll be one side of our brain that says, oh, Sharon said I need to consciously talk to myself and tell myself I'm in control. I'm okay. I know my stuff. But what will happen is that this monkey chatter will start up on the other side of the brain. And this will pip in and say things like, who do you think you're kidding? You haven't had enough time to prepare. So it's a conscious dialogue
Yes.
of then saying, I have prepared. I'm a subject matter expert. I've got my notes to keep me under control. I'm going to be fine. And then this brain will kick in again and go, no, you're not. You needed more time. So again, consciously come in and say, you've got your notes. You've lived and breathed this stuff for the last 7 years. You know it. You'll be under control. Now, if you consciously have that dialogue with yourself, eventually this little monkey brain will go, whatever, and it'll, run off and create havoc elsewhere.
Yep.
So there's just a couple of strategies, and when I'm working with audiences, I've got a range of around 15 or so strategies, and we try them all out so that people can pick their favourites and they can work on the ones that work for them.
Okay, and I can see that this doesn't just apply to a person who's about to deliver a speech, for example. This equally applies to a salesperson who's about to go into a situation, or even a teacher for that instance. Anyone that needs to interact with other people,
yes,
and where there's some element of risk, be it money, prestige, so on and so forth. Any situation whereby there can be anxiety or perceived risk, this will help people in all those circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Word of warning though, there is certainly some old advice that's still roaming out there, and I hear people going, I was told to imagine your audience naked. Now never ever do that. It's actually quite insulting to the audience, and it sets you in a totally different mindset. What we want to be is in a really respectful mindset when we're presenting. We want to ensure that we are just managing our own physiology so that we're feeling in command of ourselves.
Yeah.
And probably the other thing that is really important is not to think of yourself as lesser or more than the person that you're communicating with, but to actually set yourself on almost like a scale where you're perfectly evenly balanced.
Yes.
You're dealing with a person. You're not dealing with a demigod or somebody who knows more than you. You're dealing with a person.
Yes.
And we need to constantly remember that,
Yes.
that, when we're creating intimacy with an audience,
Yes.
it's not an audience per se, it's people.
Yes.
It's people. So we're just chatting to
Yeah.
people.
I love that. That's so important, the human element connection. So Sharon, obviously time is precious and everyone's busy, and particularly if you're asking for an audience with a person or persons, we want to be as efficient and as effective as we can possibly be. So that obviously means about trying to make sure that you're as impactful with those that you're speaking with, those you're communicating with, be it an audience, be it as a buyer in an organisation, your boss, anything, How can we become more impactful when we communicate?
About 380 BC, the great Aristotle walked this planet, and back in those days, they didn't have microphones. They had no technology to help them make presentations. There was no PowerPoint to hide behind. They simply had their bodies as a tool and their voice as an instrument to be able to influence entire communities. And what Aristotle did back in those days was look at the great orators to determine the characteristics of those that were able to change the hearts and the minds of the community. And he looked at the common elements and extracted what what is referred to now as his works on rhetoric. And what Aristotle found is that there are 3 essential elements that you need to have in a presentation for it to touch people, for people to feel good about it, and for people to buy into those concepts. And the first element was one of pathos. So pathos comes from the Greek word that we translate it to empathy or passion. And this is really about having people feel something about your message. If they don't feel something at an emotional level,
they never quite connect.
No. One ear out the other. And the pathos is about having your audience buy into your message so that it's meaningful for them, it's relevant to them, and they want more. They crave more. So pathos is sadly what's lacking in a lot of presentations today. The other 2 elements are the elements of logos, which is the logical sequencing of
Yes.
your message so that's understood and so that people can make sense of your concepts and ideas. The third element is one of ethos, which is the ethics or the expertise or the sense of authority that you have that backs up your message so that people trust that what
Yes.
you're saying
Yes.
is well researched and relevant for them in terms of it's proven
Yes.
because it's coming out of your mouth and they trust you. But so oftentimes in a business context, people have the ethos, they have the reputation of being known as a subject matter expert. They're asked by their organisation to present,
Yes.
and they do have the write-ups in the advertising and marketing, so they've got the ethos through that. They're beautifully introduced, so they have the ethos through the introduction. So the ethos is quite well covered. The logos, people spend a lot of time preparing their presentations. So generally they've thought it through fairly well and they've got a, pretty good structure to it. It's the pathos that's missing. So the easiest way that we can drive pathos is through a couple of very simple tools, which I'd love to share
Tell
with
us.
you. Okay.
Tell us.
All right.
Yeah.
So the pathos or the passion is about a number of things. So we need to have enthusiasm. If we're not enthusiastic about our own message, neither is our audience going to be. So there's a lovely saying that I use all the time, and it is that the audience feels as the speaker feels. So if you're timid and anxious and nervous, and that's how you present to your audience, it's going to make them feel the same way.
Yeah,
They'll feel anxious that their time's being wasted and nervous that they've come to the wrong event. So if you're confident and you 100% believe that you've got something of value for your audience, then your audience will also be confident and they will value what it is that you're saying. So the first one is enthusiasm. Another one is environment. So pathos comes from how you stage your environment. So if you've got your environment set up in a professional way and you have music on, or you've got beautiful lighting, or you've got material set out on the table and it looks like you're organised and you're prepared, people come in and they feel excited that it's an event. It's not just some not well thought out thing. It's actually an event that's been thought through and it raises people's anticipation.
Yes.
The third one is storytelling.
Okay.
And I want to talk about storytelling in a moment. The fourth one is the use of visuals. So the visuals and the storytelling, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into those two.
And as you said, in the great Aristotle in those times, it was all about the orator. It was all about how you connect human-wise, and we went through pathos, ethos, and logos. So we've covered that. So now we venture into that, whether the connection is and the enthusiasm you spoke about. And tell us more about storytelling, because that's really where people can connect and they become captivated by that.
Absolutely. We don't need more information. I don't know about you, but I am completely overloaded with information. What I want is meaningful information. And if you think back to when you were a child, our favourite time of the day was when we hopped on our parents' lap, we opened up the storybook and we started reading the stories. And you have young children and you know how excited they get at story time.
They love stories.
Yep, absolutely. And, we're no different as adults either. We love stories. I noticed your bookshelf, you've got a whole lot of books in there, and a lot of them are simply stories. We watch a lot of movies and a lot of TV series, and they're stories. We love stories. They have the ability to connect with people, build rapport, and create a level of meaning that we can't get from just giving facts alone. And the use of storytelling can help embed the facts and have it remembered up to 20 times more than if you simply give the fact alone. So Jeremy Bruner, who's a cognitive psychologist, did some work into retention of information. And what he found is that if we embed important information in a story, then it's 20 times more memorable.
Wow.
Now, I
Okay.
think that's quite
That's
extraordinary.
huge. Yeah.
So storytelling, there is a formula to it, or certainly one that I work with because it's easy to remember and it helps people to construct a story that is meaningful for the audience. And so I'd like to share that with
Oh,
you.
absolutely. I think
Yeah.
everyone wants to hear that.
Terrific. It's called the film formula. So the film formula is about painting if you think of it as a bit of a metaphor for kind of painting a bit of a picture in people's minds, it's actually creating that movie
Yes.
as to, putting together your story. So the film is an acronym for focus, incident, lesson and moral. So let's go through those one by one. So when you're telling a story, it's about first of all setting the scene. We as human beings, we love context. We love to know what's the overarching scenario so that we can place ourselves there in our mind's eye. So the focus element of the film formula is the contextual frame of your story. The I is the incident. So all storytelling is recounting an incident that has happened to either yourself or to somebody else. So it's simply retelling an incident that has occurred.
Okay.
So that's where we recount our
Yes.
incident. But there needs to be a point for telling our audience a story. And so that's really the lesson. What is it that you learned from that incident happening to you or to someone else?
Yes.
And the lesson is that the key takeaway that we had, that epiphany or the moment where we thought, perhaps I need to do something differently. But it doesn't end there. A good story has relevance not only to you and what you personally learned, but it has relevance to the people that are listening to that story. So there needs to be a moral for the audience. So what's the takeaway that they can benefit from hearing your experience? So that's the moral to the story. So it's the focus, the incident, the lesson, and the moral. Set the scene, describe what happened, what you learned from what happened, and then how what you learned can benefit
Yes.
the people that are listening in. Okay, so just to give you an example of how the film formula comes into play, this is a story from one of my participants, and it was a really moving story. So let me tell you his story.
Absolutely.
It was a Friday night, and I remember the day well. I was hugely stressed. All I wanted to do was to get a chicken takeaway and watch a DVD. Now, this is back in the day where you actually had to go to the video store to, go and get a video. So that's exactly what I did. As I raced home, chucked on my trackies, jumped in the car, raced up to get my takeaway. And it was only a couple of minutes away, but out of nowhere, bang, this car came into me from the side. And I don't have any recollection of what happened after that until a week later. I woke up in hospital having been in an induced coma for over a week because of all of the swelling on my brain. I also had broken pretty much every bone in my body. I had casts on both arms, both legs. 6 weeks it took before the casts could come off, and then another 6 months to learn how to walk again. I had terrible muscle wastage. I had so much pain in all of my limbs, and something that was so easy to do before, like walk, I could now no longer do. And it was a lot of physio, a lot of rehabilitation, so much work just to get back to a place where I could walk. Why? Because I didn't wear a seatbelt.
Oh,
The doctor told me that had I worn a seatbelt, that I would have suffered nowhere near the level of injury that I in fact suffered. So 6 months of rehabilitation because I didn't wear a seatbelt. So what I'd like you to think about is next time you jump in your car, grab that seatbelt, pull it across, takes 2 seconds of time. 2 seconds of time, it could save you 6 months or more of rehabilitation. In fact, 2 seconds of time, it could save you your life. That's the film formula, kind of in a nutshell. So the focus was that he wanted a night in, and he was racing up to the chicken shop. Okay. The incident was the story about the accident that he had. The lesson was that it could have all have been prevented had he worn a seatbelt. And the moral was really think about when you get in a car, what you do. Go and wear your seatbelt. So that's kind of the focus, the incident, the
So
lesson, and the
powerful,
moral.
so powerful. I'm sure everyone felt that just in watching you deliver that story.
Mm. So, you know, it's certainly a formula that I'd encourage people to use. And it can be used on impromptu speeches. If you're ever, called on to deliver an impromptu, a lot of people stress about that. Tell a story. You know, think about something that is an incident that's happened that you've learned from that relates to the topic at hand, and use the film formula.
Yeah. So Sharon, as we know, first impressions count for a great deal. And, for example, you might be introducing yourselves for the first time to new clients, or you may begin a session with your team, people that report to you, or coming on stage for the first time. Very, very important that you begin with as much impact as possible, and you come out of the gate blazing and with as much power as possible. How is that achieved? How is that best achieved?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, Steve. Generally, in the introduction of any presentation, that's where people are the most nervous.
Yes.
They are, just full of that sort of fear. They haven't found their flow yet, and it can certainly be the hardest part of the presentation. So, let's talk about, again, a formula that can be used for this. There are certain elements that we need when we start a presentation for it to have impact. And I always say that, we need to start with a bang.
Yes.
Because you don't want to come on stage and go, hello, my name's Sharon Keibel, and I'm here today to talk about, that's what I hear all the time. That is certainly not starting with a bang. What we want to do is we want to, kind of get people's interest right up front. So any introduction needs 5 elements in it. We need to establish interest straight away.
Yes.
So that's about starting with a bang. If they were slightly bored or, disinterested, we want to get them to sit up on their seats straight away. We've also got to establish need. We've got to get people thinking, why do I need to listen into this presentation? We want to establish our theme for our presentation. We want to build rapport. And we also want to state our objectives so that people know where we're going in the presentation as well. So any intro needs interest, need, theme, rapport, and our objective. So how do we establish the interest? Well, there is a formula that's known as the lure, the downside, and the rescue. In actual fact, I started...
Say that again?
Yeah, it's called the lure, the downside, and the rescue.
The lure, the downside, and the rescue. Okay.
Yep. So the lure is when you throw out the bait and you reel in the audience.
Yes.
Okay, so how you do that is by painting a picture of something that they want, something that they think, oh man, this is fantastic. I need this in my life. So it can be anything. What we're doing is painting this picture of utopia, this place of, oh, that's so what I've been wanting. I want that. And they get hooked in. So that's the lure. The downside is where we bring the audience come crashing back down to reality, where we go, haha, sorry, you're not there yet. You're actually here. Here's where things are at for you. And this is all the downside of your current reality. And they go, damn it, I knew I couldn't have that. I really wanted it. But you're right, I am actually here. So that we talk about the downside, which is the current reality. And the last element is the rescue, where we go, but you know what? There is actually a solution here, and I can get you from where you are now to where you would like to be. So I can give you that miracle cure or that magic journey and get you to that place of utopia. So that's essentially the formula. So how we do it is we start with words similar to imagine for a moment. So we paint the picture of utopia. Or you might say consider this, or what if we could? So we pose a hypothetical. Or you might say something like our future place could look like this. So whatever it is, we're doing that. So imagine for a moment, and you'll remember I started our session today with this.
Yes.
Imagine for a moment that you stand on stage and you're confident. You look everybody in the eye. Everything that you say is beautifully articulated and exactly as you've prepared. Imagine the next time you take the stage, you are so confident. You know that you've got everybody right there in the palm of your hands.
Yeah.
Okay, and people are being lured in. They're going,
You
oh,
put them
I
in the
would
end result
so
right from the start.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So that's the lure. But then again, the reality, we start with things like, unfortunately, though, the reality is, or we might say, we're not there yet, or you might say something like, that's not like it is, though, for most of us. So essentially, we're having people come back. So again, when I started today, we said the reality, though, is that when most people stand in front of an audience, their heart's pounding, the beads of sweat are forming, that big black cavernous hole is threatening to open them, swallow them up. The reality is that people feel nauseous and they're highly anxious, and when the words come out, they come tumbling out in no particular order. And that's, again, where people can relate to that downside. They go, yep, that's me. That's exactly where I'm at. And so what you've created is this big gap between where they are and where they'd like to be. So you've established a great need.
Yes.
And then the last part is the rescue. And so you can phrase it like, the good news is, or the pathway forward, or let's look at how we can bridge the gap. So they're the starting phrases. So we might say, the good news is, today I'm going to show you a way that you can effectively prepare, design and deliver powerful presentations.
Oh, I love that. Fantastic.
So it's a very simple formula, but it establishes interest because people go, I want that. It establishes need because there's this big gap, tells them the theme, builds rapport because people go, you know where I'm at, you know I'm anxious and nervous, you know where I'm at. And it also states your objective nice and clearly, one simple formula.
I love that, Sharon. That's great. So the lure,
the downside,
and the rescue.
Absolutely.
Sharon, so many people often need to address others, and often to those that don't know them already. So it's always wise to make sure that you write your own introduction and don't leave it up to somebody to introduce you wrong or do something that stuffs the whole thing up. Can you give us some advice of how to best prepare an introduction for yourself and coaching them on how you want to be introduced?
Absolutely. And you are so right. You definitely want to prepare your own introduction. Do not leave it up to somebody else to write those words for you. I always remember my very first time of taking the stage when I was much younger, and the organiser said to me, Sharon, have you got an introduction you'd like me to read out? And I went, oh, no, I didn't know you needed one. And then I went, but it's okay, I can prepare one.
Yeah.
And she said, no, it's fine, I can do that. Now, I thought it was a quick way out, so I went, oh, cool, that's great. I let her do it. Now, this is back in the day where websites, you had absolutely everything on your website. It was like this sort of huge magazine, and my About Me page had every client I'd ever worked with. It had every qualification I'd ever earned. It had all of everything about me. It was like a page and a half long. All she did was print that out and proceeded to read it.
The whole thing?
The whole
Oh, my
thing.
God.
And it took 10 minutes of
Oh,
my
no.
speaking time.
Oh, no.
And I felt so arrogant and horrible standing in the wings waiting because it was just awful hearing it, because it was too much information. It wasn't relevant.
It's meant to be read by.
It was terrible. So please, I just implore everybody, make sure that you prepare your own intro. And there's a lovely, easy formula that you can use for
Another
that.
formula. Give us another
Absolutely.
formula.
Love formulas. So it's called the TIS formula. And I think this is actually a Dale Carnegie formula, and it's a very powerful one. It's simple to use. So the T stands for topic. So that's quite straightforward. What are we talking about today, or what's the speaker going to be talking about? Then the I is for the importance. So why is this message relevant for this audience right now? Okay, so
Yes.
why is it an important message for them to hear? And then the S is for the speaker credentials. So it's
Okay.
topic, importance, speaker credentials. So I'll give you an example of what that sounds like.
Let me. So this is interesting. I like this, Sharon, because often people. I mean, and mine's like this. My introduction, I've written it such that my credentials come first, and I know that a lot of people do this. So that's not really the best way of doing it, do you think?
No, people will, there's that innate need that the question that people have is what's in this for me?
Of course. Yes.
So, innately people are going, I'm very busy. I have a lot going on in my world. Prove to me straight up front
Yeah.
as to why I should tune in.
Yes.
And so if you talk about your speaker credentials right up front, they're going, well, tell someone who cares. I
Yeah.
don't really care
Yeah.
about you until I care about the message.
Yes.
So I will only listen to you as the speaker if you have something that's important to me.
So true.
So
true.
it's very much about hook them in with the message and why the message is relevant to them, and then give the speaker credentials. So that's important. Secondly, if you have a speaker who's quite famous,
Yep.
if you give their speaker credentials first, then all they're thinking about is what they know about that person rather than the topic at hand. So they've already thinking
Yeah,
about
I'm with
everything
you.
else that they know about that person,
Yes, I
and they're
understand.
not really tuned into the message. So we always want to do topic, importance, and speaker. So it sounds something like, might be, today we're going to find out more about how to present with impact, and our session is on the confident presenter. Every person is now being called on at some point in their career to present, whether it be at board meetings, whether it be at conferences, whether it be at team meetings. We need to make sure that we don't waste people's time, that we get the message through and we cut through the white noise of everything else that's going on around us. And we do that through structuring our presentations in an impactful way. Our speaker today has more than 20 years on stage. She is a certified speaking professional, a qualification that's earned by only 7% of professional speakers globally. And she has been on many stages and is here today to share with you some of the things that she's learned to streamline how to prepare, design and deliver an effective presentation. Please put your hands together to welcome Sharon Keibel.
Yep.
So that would be the
Yes.
topic important speaker.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I'm rewriting my my introduction is a bit upside down, so I'll fix mine. So yeah, it's so important. I mean, even from a sales perspective, so this is the thing: is if when you go and do a formal speaking engagement, and I do, you see yourself. You see yourself through a more egotistical lens, I suppose. Whereas when you go into a sales situation, it's it's about them. It's about what they're going to get from it. What's their utility? What are their benefits? And so you automatically do that. So it's important for those of us that are used to speaking to people, and even if you haven't, and you know that you will, or you will at some point, you always make it about them, and it's never about us as business people or as communicators.
Well, they certainly do want to, I know for myself as a listener and an audience member, I want to know about the speaker, but in time.
Yes.
When I know I want to hear more about the message. And I'm certainly, keen to find out their credentials, but only at the right time. And that's where the TESS formula can work really well.
I like that. TESS. So Sharon, let's take the situation. We need to make a presentation of some type, or we need to deliver some sort of a sales pitch, or perhaps a talk to our team. We've, you may or may not need an introduction depending on the context, but we've got the introduction. It follows the TESS formula. What about the actual body of the presentation itself, and how it should be structured for maximum impact and to ensure that you connect with the right people and it gets into their heads?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm a great one for simplicity. I think a lot of people try to overcomplicate their message. And so, the old framework of do keep it simple
Mm.
really makes sense when you're
Yes.
structuring a presentation. If we look at the most fundamental plan for any message, it's tell them what you're going to tell them what
Mm.
you've told them.
Yes.
And the reason that that's a really traditional and worthwhile kind of frame is the fact that people crave context. People need to know, why is this important to me?
Yeah.
And is it something that I can use and get value from straight away? So we need a contextual framework on which to hang the rest of the information.
Okay.
So the introduction needs to establish that context for people, give them the overarching, what's coming, so that they can establish where to hang the information that comes next, and also an overview of the key points, so they know what to look out for.
Okay.
So that's really important, and especially in a sales presentation, a lot of people don't do this. They try and sort of hide the fact that they're there to sell. Whereas contextually, if you give people a frame around that, so it might be something like, I often use, and again, I'm a great one for formulas. So in a sales meeting, it would be the purpose of us meeting today is dot dot dot.
Yes.
And so we talk about purpose, and then we talk about the process. So what I'd like to do today is to run through this, that, and the other, and then have you experience it for yourself and get you to trial it and dot 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 dot. So that's the process.
Yep.
So use the
Yes.
process, and then give people the payoff. So the reason that this will help you is that it'll enable you to compare my product widget to another product widget, and you'll be able to make a really good decision. So
Yes.
that's the payoff.
Yes.
And then, does that sound okay with you? That's the permission. So purpose, process, payoff, permission is a really good way of providing people context about how you're going to run the meeting.
Yes.
So that's in the introduction. We want to give context and an overview of what's to come.
What you just said there about being able to compare what I'm going to show you to other things that are in your consideration set. In a sales situation, people want to buy something, or else they wouldn't be speaking to you. So they're in the process of evaluating their options. And if you're upfront and say, look, I'm here to tell you all about this, to remove some of the strain of you don't need to do your own research.
That's right.
I'll tell you all the things. Obviously other salespeople will tell you their things, and it'll make your job easier in trying to evaluate what's best for your organisation or for yourself. I like that. That's so important.
It's about transparency. And, the other thing about transparency and simplicity when you're putting together a message. So in the introduction, we want to be really clear about what we're there for and give people the context, give them the overview. Then we give them our message. So we deliver what we're there to deliver. But again, people overcomplicate this, and they give the 12 points to, or the 8-point plan for, or let me tell you the 15 reasons why you should buy our product. There's no way that people will remember all of that information. If you ask anybody when they've come out of a presentation and you say, what was that about? They go, oh, yeah, it was pretty good. It was about this, this, and this. People only remember
a few things.
3 to 4 key things anyway. So don't try and do a data dump on your
Yes,
audience.
yes.
All you want to do is deliver 3 key points. That's it. So if you've got an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, that is at a macro level, a 3-point structure. But in your body, only give 3 key points, because that's all they're going to take away. It is much better to dig deep on 3 key points than it is to try and do, 10 or 12 or whatever that they're not going to remember. So 3 key points, that's it in terms of your 3-point format. And then in your summary, then we simply summarise, because people want closure. So if we look at a general construct of a presentation, whether it be a formal presentation or whether it be a sales presentation, it's context.
Yes.
In the middle, it's key concepts, only 3. and then relevant content to back up those three key concepts. And then the last one is closure. So context, concepts, and content, and closure. So how do we wrap it up and summarize? Because we need to pull it all together and summarize and sort of close the loop at the end. I've been to a movie where they don't close off all the storylines.
Oh, yeah, you walk out and you got a yucky feeling in
It's
your
awful,
guts.
isn't
Yeah,
it? We hate not having that closure.
it's an uncomfortable.
Look, they may leave a door open for a sequel, but we need enough of the doors closed and enough of the storylines closed to get that sense of closure. And it's no different in a presentation, whether it's a business meeting. We need to wrap it up and let people know what the key steps are or the key actions are from the meeting. If it's a sales meeting, we need to do a summary of, how they can get the product, what they're going to benefit straight away. We've got to close it off nicely.
Yes, we do. And obviously that's where your call to action comes in. You ask for the sale. You ask for people's engagement. If it's a training session with your team, you want to teach them a new way of doing things. Yeah, and I love that, Sharon. It's another good formula of yours.
Yeah, so keep it simple.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate. You might be a subject matter expert and you might know a lot of stuff, but you don't need to be a know-it-all when you're presenting. You just need to give the information that is relevant to that audience at that time, and don't try and make them an expert in absolutely everything.
Yeah. So if we imagine that, Sharon, we have a room full of people or your staff sitting in front of you, or even a one-on-one with another person, be it a sales context or a discussion or whatever it may be, meetings, obviously information shifts. We go from one topic to the next, and we don't want to jar people. Like you said, there's always a context, and there needs to be a flow of information that's logical and that takes people through a journey. Let's talk a little bit about that and transitions.
Yeah, absolutely. The key thing when we're presenting is to keep in mind that we've had a lot of time to prepare our presentation. We're subject matter experts. We might have been learning about our topic for years.
Yes.
But when we're delivering a presentation to a customer or to our team, they're hearing it for the very first time.
Yes.
And if they don't understand our message, they've lost it for good.
Yep.
Because they don't get another opportunity unless it's recorded like this podcast.
Yes.
So we certainly need to make sure that it is well structured enough that people can make sense of it and stay with us through the speaking journey. Now, another technique that is incredibly important when we're presenting is to use what we call transitions or signposts or emphasis points to assist the audience to keep up with us and know exactly where we are. So they become marker points in our presentation. Now, transitions need to be two things. They need to be verbal.
Yes.
And if possible, visual.
Visual. Yep.
So verbal and visual. And so if you're putting a PowerPoint together, then you need visual transition points. And this is what a lot of people don't do, is they just dump all of their content onto their PowerPoint and their entire sales message is just vomited onto it.
Yes.
And people sort of don't really know where they're up to. So when I say visual marker points, it's a slide in there that says our second product.
Yes.
It's a very simple marker. Or if you've got a manual or materials that you're giving to people in a sales meeting, then you would have a very clear, header section to that next category or area that you're going to be talking on. Verbally, transitions are when you say to a person or say to your audience, okay, so let's now look then at our first key point for today.
Okay.
So that's a verbal transition, and all it's doing is saying to people, we've wrapped up the intro, we're now about to move on. But it's a verbal message. And a lot of speakers don't do that. So the audience gets lost. Where are we? Another verbal transition might be when we say things like, okay, let's look at the second thing, the second key point. Or you might go first, next, finally. Or you might say, our most important area of discussion today is, And then you talk about that.
Yes.
And then you might say, now, in contrast, so in contrast
Yes.
becomes a transition to say
Yes.
we're now about to look at the flip side.
Yes.
So it's helping people know where you're up to. Signposts are, similar, where we're really just marking where we're up to. So transitions and signposts are sort of similar. The emphasis points, ever heard a speaker say, now, if you take away one thing from today's
Yeah.
presentation, let
Yeah.
it be this. The reason that they're saying that is they're trying to signal that they're about to share their gold.
Yeah.
They're signaling that this is the must learn information. Please listen
Please
up.
listen.
Please
Remember.
listen.
Yeah.
Please remember it. And so that's a verbal emphasis or verbal signpost that it's important data coming up. On that, one of the things that you can do is signpost when you're about to close. You might say, in a moment, we'll wrap up and I'll call for questions. But before we do that, let's just summarise some of the key points that we've
Yes.
covered today.
Yes.
That's, another
Makes
transition.
it very clear. People know that it's...
Yeah. So if I was to say that, so in a moment we're about to wrap up and let's have a look at some of the things that we've covered today. What we've had a look at is how we introduce ourselves effectively or write our own introduction.
Yes.
We have a look at how we might use the lure, the downside and the rescue to be able to establish
Yes.
an effective introduction. We've had a look at how we structure a presentation using a 3-point format and ensuring that we have, a really solid plan. We've had a look at what else have we done? Geez, we've covered a lot of ground.
We've done a bit.
We've had a look at the purpose, process, payoff, permission formula, which can be an effective way also to start your presentation. And we've had a look at transitions, signpost, and emphasis points. So that's where we've travelled, and we probably do need to close off. And so, in summary, if people are looking for more information, I'm certainly happy to go through people's presentations and give them some advice.
Oh, that's fabulous. So to transition now to the close of our interview, Sharon, how can people get in contact with you? Tell us about your website and email
Absolutely.
addresses.
So my business is AchieverNet, and really our aim at AchieverNet is to build a community of extraordinary achievers. So we have a number of programs that help people be better communicators, more productive, stronger salespeople, and essentially better people. And so our website is www.achievernet.com. And I've certainly got some resources that I'm happy, obviously, to share with your terrific audience.
Oh, fabulous. So achievernet.com, the name of the business is AchieverNet. You're based in South Australia. You do work for companies globally.
Absolutely.
So audience outside of Australia, England, America, South Africa, wherever you happen to be, India, feel free to get in contact with Sharon. She's in Adelaide most of the time, but she does travel, and she's very highly sought after by a lot of companies in Asia and in the US. But she has the knowledge and the experience to be able to help a lot of people. So please get in contact with Sharon. She does have excellent resources on her website, which are free and are worth looking at. And you're willing to take emails. Is that right?
Absolutely. So my email address, my personal email address is sharon@achievernet.com. And I'd love to be able to touch base with people if you've got a query or a curly situation in a presentation that's coming up. Certainly happy to reach out and explore that and give you some responses. Some of the things that I have done with companies is certainly the presentation skills training, but I also do consult with organisations where they're looking to put together their visual aids more effectively, and also consult and coach individuals as well, where they may have, personal issues with anxiety around presenting, and, really helping to equip them with some good skills so they feel totally confident.
So if you're an executive and you need to give the King's Speech, just like in the movie with Jeffrey Rush, Sharon's able to help you. Sharon's able to make sure that, and you can do this over the internet with anybody, Sharon's able to make sure that you're able to give maximum impact, have be super effective in how you communicate, because that has a tremendous impact on how effective you can be, and just how much of a dent you can make in the world. Thank you, Sharon, for coming in. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll have you again for another session. If there's anybody who has questions for Sharon, Sharon@achievernet.com, you can ask her directly. If you've got questions that you'd like me to ask Sharon at our next interview, feel free to email it to podcast@thebusinessfirm.com.au. Thank you, Sharon. Enjoy the rest of the winter, although it's not really that cold.
Not yet.
It's not that cold.
Fortunately. And thank you for having me on.